What can you learn from the Army about employee empowerment and how it can improve organizational performance? I'll explain that and give a real-life example in this video. Hello, I'm Stephen Goldberg of Optimus Performance, bringing you practical tips and ideas on leadership, team development, and employee performance in the workplace. I was just watching a news piece by the CBC in Canada on the war in Ukraine, and we're right now, tomorrow actually, will be the 1-year anniversary when Russia invaded Ukraine. And the success of the Ukraine army defending the country has been phenomenal in the eyes of everyone, except the Russians perhaps. But everybody is surprised at how well they've done. And this news piece, I'll put a link to that, it's on YouTube, was an interview with 2 officers in the Canadian Army. And the second one went more detail into what happened, what transpired in terms of Canada's intervention with Ukraine to help them defend themselves. And actually, it started 7 years earlier. And it started through training. That was Canada's role, was to help Ukraine improve its self-defense by providing training to the army. And the outcome of that is very interesting in contrast to the Russian army. So the Ukraine army, what Canada taught Ukraine, well, besides skill development, I guess how to use weapons or strategy, tactical things for like the generals, the colonels, whatever. But more importantly, and the point I want to make, is the part about empowerment. So they taught the army to empower those on the front lines to make decisions. And that's really the essence of empowerment. It's about teaching people or getting them, building their confidence to make the right decisions, those that are closest to the action. And this really had a tremendous impact on the war. Whereas the Russians, when they were advancing, any decision that needed to be made had to be made by a higher up. So the higher up had to go to the front line to really see what the situation was and direct the troops. And this caused a lot of casualties to those in the higher ranks of the Russian army and brought disarray to the troops because it interfered with the leadership and the flow of the strategy of what they had wanted to implement. And we all saw the result of what a great defense the Ukrainians put up. And that was in a big part due to people, the soldiers, being able to make decisions on the fly based on the training that they received. So that's the second part. If you want to empower people to make the right decisions, and think of it in your own company perhaps, whether it be salespeople, customer service, interacting directly with the client, you want them to make those decisions that are going to not only satisfy the clients, but also satisfy the company. So training plays a big role in empowering people. You cannot empower people to make the right decisions without the right training. And in fact, one of the tools that I've used with my clients is a customer service survey or assessment. And one part of it asks people, those in the position, customer service, what are the right answers in terms of dealing with customers face to face? And leadership or management completes that questionnaire as well, and that forms like a benchmark. And then they can see when people answer the survey where there's a misalignment in terms of perception, in terms of understanding of what management wants and what people think is the right answer. And that just opens the door, those gaps, those differences, opens the door for training. And often training is just clarifying and making sure people understand, but that is training, and it's imperative to have the right training for the people so they can understand the decisions they need to make and when they need to make them, and what is the limit or what authority do they actually have. So that clarification along with training is really important in that empowerment process. The other part, which is really key too, is the leadership. So leaders need to be able to give up that power of decision making, because one thing that was said in that news clip was that when the Canadian forces came in to do the training, the Ukraine soldiers and army had been using the same model that the Russians do, which is a top-down leadership approach. So they had to train the leaders on a new model, on a new way of leading, of pushing down the decision-making and empowering the troops at the front line. So that was a shift in thinking at the leadership level. And that's really key, because often leaders think that they cannot give up power because it's going to weaken them. But in fact, it strengthens you as a leader when people can make the decisions and builds that trust and relationship. And trust is another really key thing, because before you could just give up decision making, you have to trust that they are the right people to make the right decisions. So I go back to having the right people in the right role, but also that's where the training comes in, because as you progress in your training and see that people are responding well, you build that trust, and then as a leader you're able to gradually let go that power because you feel confident, you trust that they're going to make the right decision. So the leadership shift in thinking, shift in understanding that you're not giving up your power just because you're allowing people to make more decisions. You're actually gaining more power because now you have time to step back and look at the landscape, do more strategic thinking, look ahead. If you're always caught up in making every decision, you don't have the time to do that. So that's really key, that transformative leadership, the training, and leading to the empowerment and having people make the decisions when it's most important. And obviously in a life and death situation, you need to make split decisions. It also entails teamwork too, because people that are on the front lines, they need to rely on each other and trust each other that they can collectively come to a consensus or be able to discuss the situation when it's warranted, when they have the time. Otherwise, they have to act individually. But they need to be able to engage in discussion and quickly come to a consensus. So consensus building is another part of the training that's important in terms of employee empowerment. So that's what I wanted to share. And congratulations to the Ukraine Army and to Canada for providing that support and training. And I'll put a link to that video on YouTube in the description of this one. So check that out. You could also request a sample of the customer service survey that I mentioned. Also, if you want to learn about how to empower people in your organization, you can book a chat with me and we can discuss that together. I'll put a link to where you can schedule that. If you haven't already subscribed, do so now. so you get news of new videos. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so those notifications do come. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk again soon.